There will be moments in life when the weight feels too heavy, the path feels too long, and the hope that once carried you begins to fade. Everyone at some point faces the quiet whisper inside that says, "Oh, why keep going? Maybe I should just give up." But it's in those very moments when you're weary, discouraged, and close to quitting that you are standing on the edge of something greater than you can imagine. The first thing to remember when you feel like giving up is this: you are not alone. You were never created to carry the burdens of life by yourself. Too often we assume that because we are struggling, it means we're weak. But struggle does not mean weakness. It means you are still fighting. And when you feel like you can't take one more step, that is the very moment you need to lean on the one who has the strength you lack. The second thing to do is shift your perspective. Pain narrows your vision. It makes you focus only on the problem, right in front of you. But life is bigger than the moment you're in right now. The storm you see today is not the end of your story. Sometimes you need to lift your eyes above the waves and remind yourself of the bigger picture. You may not understand why you're going through what you're going through, but you can trust that the difficulty you face is shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The third thing is, don't isolate yourself. When you feel like quitting, the temptation is to withdraw, to keep your pain hidden, to push people away. But the truth is, healing and strength often come through connection. Find people who will remind you of who you are when you forget. Surround yourself with voices that encourage rather than criticize, with people who will sit with you in silence if needed, and who will remind you that giving up is not your only option. Fourth, take the next small step. Many give up because they try to figure out the whole journey at once. They get overwhelmed by how far they still have to go. But you don't need to have all the answers today. You don't need to solve every problem by tomorrow. Just take the next step. Small steps done faithfully lead to big changes over time. Remember, progress is progress, no matter how slow it may feel. And finally, anchor yourself in hope. Hope is not wishful thinking. Hope is a confident expectation that what you are going through is not permanent, that this valley has an end, that this chapter is not your whole book. When you hold on to hope, you begin to see light even in the darkest places. So what should you do when you feel like giving up? Remember, you are not alone. Shift your perspective. Your feelings may tell you to quit, but feelings are not final. Quitting might feel like the easiest option today, but perseverance will give you the reward tomorrow. The very breakthrough you've been waiting for may be just on the other side of the struggle you're facing right now. Don't let the weariness of the moment steal the victory of your future. There comes a point in every person's journey when the weight of life feels unbearable, when the road ahead feels endless, and when the whispers of doubt grow louder than the voice of faith. In those moments, the human heart begins to wonder if it has the strength to take another step. The first truth that needs to sink deep into your spirit when you feel like giving up is this: you are not alone. So often, discouragement convinces us that no one else knows what we're facing, that no one else could possibly understand the pain we carry. Loneliness magnifies despair, and despair magnifies loneliness until the cycle makes us feel completely abandoned. But the reality is that even in your darkest valley, you are not walking alone. The reason so many people collapse under the pressure of life is not because they are weak, but because they try to shoulder everything by themselves. The human heart was never designed to bear the crushing weight of worry, guilt, fear, or sorrow in isolation. From the beginning, we were made for connection, for relationship, for the strength that comes when we stop pretending we have it all figured out and admit that we need help. There is incredible power in admitting you can't do it all on your own. That confession is not a sign of weakness. It is the doorway to strength. Think about how burdens are shared in everyday life. If you have ever carried a heavy piece of furniture with another person, you know that the load instantly feels lighter when two hands take the weight. The piece of furniture itself does not become lighter, but the shared effort makes it manageable. Life works the same way. The challenges you face may not disappear, but when you lean on someone who has strength where you are weak, you suddenly find the ability to keep moving forward. In seasons of deep discouragement, the mind plays cruel tricks. It convinces you that nobody cares, that nobody notices, that nobody would bother to step in and help even if they knew. Those lies thrive in the silence of isolation. The truth is that more people care about you than you realize, and there is more support available to you than you have yet discovered. Sometimes you don't see the help around you until you speak up, until you open the door and let someone else walk in. A closed mouth doesn't get fed, and a closed heart doesn't get healed. When you feel like giving up, pause long enough to remind yourself that you are never truly abandoned. Even in your loneliest hour, there is a presence that never leaves you. That quiet assurance is meant to remind you that strength is not just found inside yourself. It is drawn from the one who created you and the people he has placed around you. Too often, we wait until we are breaking down to reach out for help, when in reality, reaching out early can prevent a total collapse. Connection is not just a survival strategy, it is the design of life it sets out. You may look at others and think they are stronger, braver, or more capable than you, but what you don't see are the unseen hands that have carried them through their own darkest hours. No one succeeds in isolation. No one overcomes every battle without help. Behind every story of perseverance is a story of someone who refused to carry their burden alone. The greatest victories in life are not just personal triumphs. They are collective testimonies of the people who stood together in the storm. There is a temptation to believe that because you feel alone, you actually are alone. Feelings are powerful, but they are not always truthful. Just because you feel abandoned does not mean you are abandoned. Just because you feel invisible does not mean you are unseen. Just because you feel like no one could understand what you're going through does not mean others haven't walked the same valley. One of the enemy's greatest weapons is isolation, because a disconnected person is a vulnerable person. But the antidote to isolation is reminding yourself that you were never designed to walk this journey alone. When exhaustion tells you to quit, when doubt tells you you're done, and when pain tells you there's no point in going on, that is the very moment you need to lean, not stand alone. Lean on the strength that is greater than yours. Lean on the friendships that remind you who you are. Lean on the faith that tells you your story isn't over yet. Even when your own strength runs out, you can be sustained by the strength of another. You may be tempted to retreat, to pull back, to withdraw into silence because you don't want to burden anyone else with your pain. But carrying everything in silence only makes the load heavier. Allowing others to step in, to listen, to encourage, to walk with you through the valley is not a burden to them. It is a privilege. People are not weakened by helping others. They are strengthened by it. In the same way that you would never hesitate to help someone you love, you must not hesitate to let others help you. This is why the first truth to embrace when you feel like giving up is to remind yourself daily, hourly if necessary, that you are not walking this road by yourself. The weight you are carrying is not yours to bear alone. There is help available. There is strength available. There is hope available. And the moment you believe that you are not alone is the moment the darkness begins to lose its power over you. When life becomes overwhelming, one of the most important things you can do is shift your perspective. Discouragement has a way of narrowing your vision until all you can see is the immediate problem in front of you. Pain acts like a magnifying glass, enlarging the difficulty and shrinking everything else. It convinces you that the struggle you're in will last forever, that the storm will never pass, and that your life will always be defined by this one chapter. But perspective has the power to transform how you experience the very same situation. Nothing may change on the outside, but when you change the way you look at it, your heart begins to regain strength. Think about how a mountain looks when you're standing right at the base of it. All you see is the towering height, the jagged edges, the intimidating climb, It feels impossible. But if you were to rise above it, even just a little, and see the mountain from a distance, your view would change. Yes, sure. From above, the mountain that once looked endless now has boundaries, edges, and an end. The same mountain exists, but your perspective determines whether it feels like an endless wall or a conquerable path. The same is true of the challenges you face in life. Quote, the problem may be real, but how you choose to see it will either crush you or strengthen you. Shifting perspective does not mean pretending your struggles aren't real. It doesn't mean denying your pain or ignoring your emotions. It simply means choosing not to let the problem be the only thing you see. It means stepping back, lifting your eyes, and remembering that this moment is just one part of your journey, not the whole story. When you zoom out, you remember that you've survived storms before, that valleys are always followed by mountaintops, and that night is always followed by morning. The tunnel you are walking through is not endless, even though your feelings might say it is. Sometimes perspective comes from remembering what you have already overcome. How many times in your past did you feel like you wouldn't make it through, only to discover later that what once terrified you became the very thing that shaped your character? What you're going through today will one day be something you look back on and say, that was hard, but it didn't destroy me. In fact, it made me stronger. When you look at the present through the lens of your past victories, it gives you courage to keep moving. Perspective also comes from realizing that growth often requires discomfort. The seasons that stretch you the most are often the seasons that prepare you for your greatest opportunities. Pressure shapes diamonds. Heat refines gold. Struggle builds endurance. What feels like a setback may actually be preparation. What feels like an ending may be the very doorway to a new beginning. When you start to see your struggle as part of a bigger process, the pain does not disappear, but it gains meaning. And meaning can sustain you through moments that otherwise feel unbearable. Another way to shift perspective is by comparing temporary to eternal. The human tendency is to think today is all there is, to act as if the current pain will last forever. But the truth is, no season lasts forever. Winter eventually gives way to spring. Storms eventually give way to clear skies. Problems eventually give way to solutions. Holding on to that bigger picture can give you hope in the middle of the hardest nights. There is also power in gratitude to shift perspective. Gratitude does not erase pain, but it balances it. When you begin to focus on what is still good, what is still working, and what you still have, the weight of what you've lost doesn't feel quite as heavy. It doesn't mean you ignore the bad, but you refuse to let the bad blind you to the good. Gratitude lifts your eyes off the ground and reminds you that even in the valley, there are still blessings all around you. Sometimes perspective comes from looking at others who have walked through similar trials. When you see someone who endured something greater than you and still found joy, still kept faith, still pressed forward, it reminds you that the human spirit is resilient. Their story becomes proof that what you're facing is not the end, and if they made it through, you can too. This doesn't minimize your pain, it magnifies your hope. Your circumstances may not change overnight. The challenges may remain. The road ahead may still be long. But when you shift your perspective, you take away the power of despair to control you. You recognize that while you can't always control what happens to you, you can control how you see it. You can choose to see obstacles as opportunities, pain as preparation, and setbacks as setups for something greater. Perspective is not about ignoring reality. It's about seeing a greater reality beyond what your eyes can see in the moment. When discouragement weighs heavily on your heart, one of the most dangerous impulses is the urge to isolate yourself. Pain often makes people retreat into silence, pulling away from the very relationships that could bring healing and strength. The human instinct in seasons of weakness is to hide, to shield others from our struggles, and to carry our burdens quietly. But isolation magnifies the weight of discouragement. When you withdraw from others, the voice of despair grows louder, and what might have been bearable with support begins to feel crushing alone. Isolation convinces you that no one cares, that no one could understand, and that no one has time to listen. But those thoughts are lies that thrive in the shadows of silence. The truth is, you were created for connection. From the beginning of life, people were designed to find strength in community, encouragement in companionship, and resilience through relationships. Just as a single coal removed from a fire quickly grows cold, a person separated from others quickly loses hope. But when that coal is returned to the fire, it reignites. In the same way, when you reconnect with others, even when it feels uncomfortable, your spirit can be reignited with courage. There is something powerful about simply being seen and heard. Sometimes people don't need solutions or answers. They just need someone willing to listen without judgment. When you allow yourself to open up to a trusted friend, family member, mentor, or community, you give them the opportunity to remind you of truths you have forgotten. They can reflect back to you the strength they see, the progress you've made, and the hope that you still have, even if you can't feel it in the moment. Without those reminders, discouragement becomes a closed loop inside your mind, repeating negative thoughts until they feel like absolute reality. But with connection, that loop is interrupted and new, life-giving thoughts can take root. The temptation to keep your struggles hidden often comes from pride or fear. Pride whispers that admitting you need help makes you weak. Fear whispers that if you reveal your struggles, others will think less of you. But in reality, vulnerability is a sign of courage, not weakness. To share your burdens requires bravery, and those who are brave enough to be honest often find the deepest healing. People connect most not in their strengths, but in their struggles. By hiding your pain, you rob others of the chance to walk with you and grow closer through shared humanity. By sharing it, you open the door for deeper connection and unexpected support. History and human experience show that those who endure the hardest seasons are rarely the ones who walked alone. Armies win battles together, not in isolation. Teams achieve victory through collaboration, not solitary effort. Families survive hardships because they lean on one another. In the same way, when you are tempted to withdraw in moments of exhaustion or despair, the very act of staying connected becomes your lifeline. Even if words fail, even if nothing changes immediately, the presence of another person by your side can be enough to keep you moving forward. It's important to also recognize that not all company builds strength. Choosing the right people to surround yourself with makes a difference. In moments of weakness, you don't need voices that tear down, criticize, or magnify your pain. You need voices that encourage, uplift, and point you toward hope. Seek out those who speak life rather than despair, who challenge you to keep going rather than give up. The right voices can become anchors for your spirit when everything else feels unsteady. Even when you feel like you have no one, there are still opportunities to connect. Communities exist in many forms: faith groups, support groups, friendships, and even strangers who have walked through similar struggles. Isolation tells you that you're alone, but the world is filled with people who have experienced what you're experiencing. There is strength in shared testimony. Hearing the story of someone else who endured pain and overcame it can remind you that your own story is not finished. Sometimes connection is not only about receiving help, but about giving it. Serving others in their struggles can actually pull you out of your own despair. When you choose to step into someone else's life with encouragement, compassion, or practical help, you are reminded that your life still has meaning and value. Helping someone else does not erase your own pain, but it shifts your focus outward and reignites purpose. In that act of giving, you often discover strength for yourself. The pull to isolate is natural in hard times, but it is not healthy. Solitude for rest can be good, but isolation out of despair is destructive. What makes the difference is whether you allow your solitude to be temporary and restorative, or whether you let it harden into loneliness. The key is learning when to step back toward others, even when your emotions resist. Connection is not just about survival, it's about flourishing. And when you surround yourself with the right voices, when you dare to be vulnerable, and when you refuse to carry the weight alone, you find that what once seemed impossible to endure becomes something you can walk through one step at a time. One of the most powerful truths to remember when you feel like giving up is that you don't have to figure everything out all at once. The mind often magnifies the future until it feels unbearable, replaying questions like, how am I ever going to get through this? Or what if I can't handle what comes next? The sheer size of the journey can feel paralyzing when all you can see is how far you still have to go. This is why it is so important to shift your focus away from the entire mountain and instead concentrate on the very next small step in front of you. Progress is rarely about giant leaps. It is almost always the result of steady, consistent steps taken one at a time. When you try to solve the whole problem at once, you set yourself up for exhaustion and discouragement. But when you take it piece by piece, what once felt impossible suddenly becomes manageable. Think of a marathon runner. No one runs 26 miles in a single breath. They run one step at a time, 1 mile at a time, and by stringing together small steps, they reach the finished line. Life's challenges work the same way. The key to endurance is not in doing everything at once, but in simply doing the next thing faithfully. There is a quiet strength in breaking down overwhelming problems into smaller actions. Instead of asking, how will I make it through the next year? You begin asking, what can I do today? Instead of panicking about how everything will turn out, you choose to focus on the next right choice. That shift in thinking lightens the weight because you are no longer trying to carry tomorrow before it arrives. Worrying about the future only doubles your burden. You carry today's pain along with tomorrow's, even though tomorrow has not yet come. By focusing on the next step, you place your energy where it can actually make a difference, in the present moment. This principle is not only practical, it is deeply liberating. The pressure to figure out everything can suffocate joy and rob you of peace. But when you realize you are only responsible for the next step, the burden lifts. You don't need to know how the whole journey will unfold. You just need to trust that each small act of faithfulness will move you forward. It is much like walking through a dark forest at night with a lantern. The lantern doesn't show you the whole path ahead, but it gives you just enough light for the next few steps. And as you take those steps, the light moves with you, revealing more of the way forward. Life often works that way. You won't always see the full picture, but you'll always have enough light for the next decision, the next move, the next step. Taking the next small step also protects you from the paralysis of perfectionism. Many people give up because they feel if they can't do everything perfectly, they shouldn't try at all. But progress is not about perfection, it's about persistence. Small, imperfect steps are infinitely better than standing still in fear. Over time, those small steps add up, and the very thing that once seemed unreachable becomes a reality. The seeds you plant today may not produce fruit immediately, but they are building towards something greater. Growth is gradual, not instant. Another reason to focus on the next step is because momentum is powerful. The hardest part of any journey is often the beginning. Once you start moving, even in small ways, the act of moving forward creates its own energy. That energy builds confidence, and confidence builds perseverance. Before long, what started as a single small step begins to turn into consistent forward motion. Even if the progress feels slow, it is still progress. A small step forward keeps you from staying stuck in the same place. There is also wisdom in celebrating small victories. When you acknowledge the progress you've made, no matter how small, you reinforce hope in your heart. Each step forward is proof that you are still capable, still resilient, still moving. Too often, people dismiss the small wins because they don't feel dramatic enough, but those small wins are the foundation for larger ones. Just as a house is built brick by brick, a life is rebuilt step by step. Recognizing the value of each step keeps you motivated to keep going. Sometimes the next step is practical, making a phone call, sending an application, or showing up when you don't feel like it. Sometimes it's emotional, choosing to forgive, choosing to rest, choosing to let go of bitterness. Sometimes it's spiritual, choosing to pray, choosing to trust, choosing to believe that there's still hope even when you can't see it. Whatever that step is, it is rarely the whole solution, but it is always movement in the right direction. The journey of endurance is not about eliminating difficulty. It's about learning how to walk through difficulty without collapsing under its weight. By committing to the next small step, you build endurance in your spirit. Each step becomes a declaration that you will not let discouragement define you. Each step becomes proof that even when life feels overwhelming, you are still moving forward, one decision, one choice, one moment at a time. When you reach the point of wanting to give up, one of the most essential things you can do is anchor yourself in hope. Hope is not some shallow optimism that ignores reality or pretends everything is fine when it isn't. Hope is a deeper confidence, a steady assurance that the storm you are facing is not permanent, that the darkness you are walking through will eventually give way to light, and that the pain you feel today will not define the rest of your life. Without hope, discouragement becomes unbearable. What? But with hope, you find the strength to endure seasons that once felt impossible. Hope is what lifts your eyes above your current struggle and allows you to see the possibility of a better tomorrow. It doesn't mean the challenges disappear. It means they no longer have the final word over your future. When you anchor yourself in hope, you remind yourself that what you're facing is temporary. No matter how strong the storms eventually pass. No matter how deep the valley, valleys eventually give way to mountaintops. Hope whispers to your heart that what you see right now is not the end of your story. It's easy to lose hope when life feels stagnant, when you've been fighting the same battle for too long, or when disappointment after disappointment seems to pile up without relief. But hope is not based on how you feel. It is a decision to believe in a future you cannot yet see. It is the choice to hold on, even when your hands are trembling. It is the quiet courage that says, I will not let this season break me, because I believe there is more ahead than what I see today. Anchoring yourself in hope requires that you resist the temptation to let despair be your foundation. Despair shifts with every setback, but hope holds steady. Despair crumbles under pressure, but hope endures. When you anchor a ship in the harbor, it may still be tossed by the waves, but it doesn't drift away because it is secured to something deeper. In the same way, hope keeps you from drifting when the waves of discouragement crash against you. You may sway, you may stumble, but you are not carried away. Hope also changes how you interpret your struggles. Without hope, pain feels meaningless. With hope, pain becomes part of a larger purpose. Without hope, delays feel like dead ends. With hope, delays become detours that are guiding you somewhere better. Without hope, setbacks feel like failure. With hope, setbacks become setups for growth. The circumstances may not change, but hope transforms how you carry them. One of the most practical ways to anchor yourself in hope is to fill your heart and mind with reminders of truth. Read words that inspire you, surround yourself with people who lift you up, reflect on moments in your past when what looked impossible eventually turned out for your good. Akudab. Hope is strengthened by memory. When you recall times you've made it through before, you fuel your belief that you can make it through again. You've already survived days you thought you couldn't, and that in itself is proof that you are stronger than you think. Another way to nurture hope is to look for glimpses of light, however small, in your current situation. Sometimes hope doesn't come in giant breakthroughs, but in small signs that you are not forgotten. It might be a kind word at the right time, a door opening unexpectedly, or simply the strength to get through one more day. If you train your eyes to see these glimpses, they become reminders that the story isn't over yet. Hope also grows when you allow yourself to dream again. Discouragement makes you stop imagining, stop believing, and stop planning for the future. But when you give yourself permission to picture a better tomorrow, you breathe life back into your spirit. You may not know exactly how things will turn out, but the act of envisioning a brighter future is itself a declaration of hope. There will always be moments when despair feels easier than hope, when quitting feels easier than holding on. But every time you choose hope, you are making a decision that your current season will not have the final say. You're deciding to keep walking, to keep believing, and to keep pressing forward even when your strength is low. When you feel like giving up, remind yourself that anchoring in hope is not about denying your pain. It's about declaring that your pain is not the end. It's about believing that there is more to your life than what you are facing right now. It's about trusting that better days are still possible, even if they take time to arrive. So hold on to hope, even when it feels fragile. Hold on to hope, even when it feels like all you have left. Hope is often the only thing that stands between giving up and pressing on. And when you refuse to let go of it, you discover that hope has the power to carry you further than you ever thought possible. You may not see the finish line yet, but hope assures you that it's there. You may not understand why the path is hard, but hope reminds you that the struggle is shaping you for something greater. And one day, when you look back, you'll see that choosing to hold on to hope in your darkest hour was the very thing that led you into the light.